Hi friends, welcome back to Parnika tutorials. In the last video, I have discussed what is a component, what is a header component, side nav component, main content component, footer component, root or app component, what is the advantage of component, and components are broadly classified into two types. One is functional component and class component. Then I have discussed in detail about the functional component with an example. I hope you have watched that video. If you did not watch that video, or if you don't know what is a component, what is a functional component, I request you to go back and watch that video and come back to this video. In this video, I want to discuss in detail about the class component and what is the difference between the functional component and class component, and which component you should use in which scenario. All these things I will discuss in detail for you. So I sincerely request everyone to watch the complete video for better understanding. Class components are basically classes. Functional components are simply JavaScript function. So if you want to define any functional component, we have defined a function. So how can you define a function? Using the function keyword, and then you need to provide the function name. Within the curly braces, you need to write the HTML code which describes the user interface. Similarly, the class components are basically the classes. The classes will have a render method. In the render method, you will return the HTML code which describes the user interface. So the class components are also similar to the functional components, receives the properties as an input and returns the HTML code. Class components are stateful class components, meaning is that each class component maintains a private internal state or private internal data as it is storing or maintaining the state. That's why I can say that class components are stateful class components. When it comes to the functional components, they are not maintaining the state information. So that's why we can say that functional components are stateless components. Now let me discuss the class component with an example so that it will be clear for you. Let me go to the Visual Studio, and then in the SRC folder, already we have created the components. Inside the components, I will create a new file and I will keep the name as hello.js. And in the hello, the H should be in capital letters. And then I will write the code in the hello.js. So what I will do, I will write import react, component from React. And then we need to define a class. So I will write class welcome. If you want to make this class as a React component, we need to follow two steps. One step is that this class should extend the component class from the React. And the second step you need to follow is the class has to implement a render method which will return null or some HTML code. So whenever you have defined any class, if you want to make that class as a React component, first thing you need to extend the component class from the React, and second one is that inside this class you need to implement the render method which returns the HTML code or null. First I need to extend the component class from React. So I will write class welcome extends component, and then I will open the curly braces, and then I need to implement the render method. As I said earlier, the render method will return the null or some HTML code. So I want to return HTML code. So I will write return h1 welcome to class components. This component is not connected with the rest of the React application. What is the React application we are using here? Example 1. This welcome class is not connected with rest of the application. If you want to connect this component with the rest of the application, what you need to do? You need to export the welcome class from hello.js, import it into app.js, and then include it in the app component. First, I need to export the welcome class. To do that one, I will write export default, and then I will write welcome, and then I will go to the app.js, and then I need to import the welcome class from the components folder, then hello.js. So I need to write here import welcome from this welcome class is there in which folder? In the components folder. So you need to write components, and then in hello.js. So you need to write hello. In the div tag, you need to use the tag called welcome. Let me have welcome here. Now let me save this app.js, hello.js. Now I need to execute this example1 React application. To do that one, I will go to the terminal, new terminal, and then I will go to this example1 folder. So I will write cd example1, then I will write npm start. Now you can see we got the output as welcome to PT, like, share and subscribe, welcome to class components. Why we got this output welcome to PT, like, share and subscribe is already we have discussed about the functional components in the last video. There we have written Parnika.js having two functional components called fun and fun1. We have exported them and then we have imported them in the app.js. If you don't want to execute them, let me delete it and let me save this one, and let me remove this import statement. Let me save the hello.js, app.js, and then let me go to the browser and refresh it. Without refreshing itself, we got the output as welcome to class components. So like this, we can implement the class component. Now can we have one more class? We'll verify. We'll go to the hello.js. We will have one more class. I will write YouTube is the name of the class, which extends the component class, and then in the YouTube class I will implement the render method. I will return, hey YouTube, support educational channels, because all the entertainment providers are only getting the money in YouTube. The people who are teaching the educational content, they are not getting much support from the YouTube. Do I need to export this one also? So if I want to export, I will write here export, and let me save this one, and then I will import the class called YouTube in the app.js. Let me copy this one and again paste it here, and in place of welcome I will write YouTube, and then here I will provide the YouTube tag. Now let me save this one. Hello.js I have saved, app.js also I have saved. Let me go to the browser. We got the output. Welcome to class components. Hey YouTube, support educational channels. As we said in the functional components, the same one will apply in the class components also. If you have multiple classes, one class you can export by default. Other classes, if you want to export, you need to use the export keyword. Whatever the class you are exporting by default, in the app.js you can change its name. But what are the classes you are exporting with the help of export keyword, those class names you cannot change it. Okay, suppose in place of welcome, if I write we, okay, and here also I will write we, and now let me save it, and here also I will save it. Instead of that one, I will change the content also, so that you will understand. Welcome to my world. I will save this one, and also I will save it, and let me go to the browser and let me refresh it. Even without refreshing, we got the output. Welcome to my world. hey YouTube, support educational channels. So like this, we can define a class component in React application. In the last video, I have discussed about the functional components. In this video, I have discussed about the class component. Now you might be wondering what is the advantage of using one over the other. Meaning is that already we know about the functional components. Now we have learned about the class component. What is the advantage of functional components over the class components? What is the advantage of class components over the functional components? Now let me compare the class components and functional components. Then you will understand what is the advantage of one over the other when exactly you use a particular component also. Functional components are simple functions which gets input as properties or props and returns HTML code which describes the user interface. Functional components are simple JavaScript functions only. Already we know how to define a function, how to call a function, and also I have discussed about the arrow functions. The beauty of the arrow functions is they will make the code simple, elegant and easy to understand. So functional components are simple functions. As the functional components are simple functions, you can use the functional components as much as possible. If you can perform a task using the functional components and class components, instead of using the class component, you can use the functional components, because functional components are simple functions, whereas the class components you need to maintain the private information. So that's why class components are little bit complex as compared to the functional components. So whenever it is possible, you can use the functional components over the class components. Functional components are stateless components, whereas class components are stateful components. So a class component maintains the private internal state. So I can say that some information which is private to that component and use that information to describe the user interface, that information you need to maintain. If you have more number of class components, each with their internal private information, maintaining and debugging the application will be difficult. That problem is not there in the functional components. So functional components are stateless components, or I can say them as the dumb components or presentational components. Now we will highlight the points related to the class components. Class components provides more feature rich because they can maintain the own private state. When it comes to the functional components are simple functions, they cannot provide the more features, but when it comes to the class components, they are feature rich because they can maintain their own private state. And we have discussed that class components are stateful components because they are maintaining their own private state or data. So I can say that class components are stateful, smart, container components. When it comes to the functional components, they are stateless, dumb, presentational components. So with this one, I have discussed in detail about the functional components and class components. Before ending this video, I want to tell one thing. If you observe here, a class component or a functional component is returning the HTML code. That is what I am telling from starting. But this is not the HTML code. This is the JSX, which is JavaScript XML code. So what is JavaScript XML? How can you use JavaScript XML? Without using JavaScript XML, how can you create a component, and how can you export and import it, and how can you use it in a React application? All these concepts I will discuss in detail in the next video. If you still have any doubts related to the functional components and class components, feel free to ask me in the comment section. I will try to clear your doubts as early as possible. Thank you for watching the complete video. Have a nice day.